Hello, lovely people. Welcome back. I think we're at part 13 now. Today, we are going to start off by just, looking at the bigger picture, showing you what we have done so far. And then I've chosen some buttons. So we're going to do the buttonholes. Hopefully, if we have enough time, we'll do the bodies, as in sewing up the shoulder seams and then attaching the sleeves. In terms of the bigger picture, we've got the skirt, over there. We've done the skirt, and then we have the bodice. See here, let's move this back a bit. Okay, and then we have the sleeves. See? Okay, so we've got most of the building blocks. Now let's get the contrasting pieces together. And there we have the collar, the neck sash, and the waist sash. So those are the main building blocks. We're at the stage now where it's kind of a little bit like a Lego and we just have to put it together. So let's get on with doing the buttons, the buttonholes. This collar doesn't have a collar stand, okay? So with regards to the button placement, you can go ahead and follow the button placement on the actual pattern itself, but I tend to do my own thing. So first of all, I will mark off where my 1/2 inch seam allowance is, so I know that that's where my seam line is going to be, right? And I want a button right up there, right on that point. So that's where my first button is going to be, and it will be going down. And then I'm just going to, depending on the buttons that I have, I'll then decide where they will go. These are the buttons that I've chosen, not the most inspired, but they were already in my sewing cave. So they've got a slight mustardiness. Can't get them to focus, but this is what they would look like on there. So, all right, they blend in nicely. Before I decide where I'm going to place my buttonholes, I have to do a test buttonhole so that I can see how long my actual buttonhole is itself. It seems a little bit of a big fuff, but it does mean that I can create nicely evenly spaced buttonholes. And this is how I just always do my buttonholes. I never follow the markings on the actual pattern itself. I do for the test buttonhole to make sure I've got the correct tension and look and feel. I'm going to mimic the actual structure that I'm going to be sewing a buttonhole on the dress. So that means that I need an interfaced piece of crepe fabric and a non-interfaced piece of crepe fabric, and then I'll be doing the buttonhole down the side, and then I will get my settings correct. My beautiful vintage sewing machine doesn't do buttonholes, the 201K. So for the buttonholes, I'm switching over to my Husqvarna because it's got a one-step buttonholer, which is a very useful thing to have as a seamstress. My Husqvarna has got a buttonhole foot, which means that I get to just put the button in there, clasp it so that it doesn't fall out, and then I'll just attach it to the presser foot here. This Husqvarna 100QH class has two types of buttonholes. It's got your normal rectangular buttonhole and it's got a keyhole buttonhole, which tends to be used for coats or jackets that have really thick, bulky shank buttons. I've only ever used this once. It was okay. I tend to use this one. And on this setting, I can actually adjust the width of the zigzag stitch and also the stitch length itself. So there are a few options. Like you can make it much tighter if you wanted to, or a bit wider and a bit looser. That's why it's important to try to do a test sample first. Okay, so you want to make a note, if you don't know already, whether the way your machine constructs a buttonhole is such that it starts at the top and it goes down, or it starts at the bottom and it goes up, because this matters when you then actually go onto your actual button placket. It has happened to me before that I forgot which direction it sews and I placed it in the wrong direction, and I ended up having half a buttonhole sewn in where the collar stand was supposed to go. So just make a note of which direction it sews the buttonhole in. Even though I do love vintage sewing machines, modern sewing machines do have certain advantages. So for instance, just pressing this one button means that I will get a buttonhole done for me without any fuss or any kerfuffle whatsoever. And I really do appreciate that about modern sewing machines. Okay, let's have a look. So I've changed the speed, I've reduced the speed so that it's not going too fast. I'm always a bit nervous with buttonholes if I have them going at full speed. Right? I'm happy with that. So this is on the standard machine settings. I don't feel like I need to play around with that. That's a good looking buttonhole. Yep. Now that we've got a sample buttonhole, what we're going to do is, right after I increase the brightness on here and lock, we're going to use our nifty little seam gauge to actually measure exactly how wide the buttonhole is. So just looking at a button by itself doesn't really give you a good idea of what the buttonhole would look like. So as you can see, you'd have that. So now I know that I've marked it here. This is where my seam line is for the collar, and I want to have a button sitting right here. Okay, so I need to be sure, and my machine, when it is making buttonholes, it goes backwards. So it will start at this point here, and then it sews going backwards. So you can see how if I don't make a note of that and I put it a little bit higher up, I'll end up with a buttonhole over here. Okay. So I have that marked over there. And so I know every time I place a button, I need to have this much length. The sleeve cuffs are going to have two. Oh, if I have enough, I might do a third one. But I'm thinking I'll probably place two. I now have just a little bit of an estimate of how I want the buttons to be spaced, but now I have to be precise with it. And so I'm going to use my other seam gauge, or you can use a ruler, whichever one, but I don't want to lose this length that I have of the buttonhole. So I'm going to measure the distance between the bottom line where the buttonhole is going to start to the tangent at the top of the second buttonhole, right? I've got that, and I'm going to mark this. That's moved. And I'm going to mark this point here. That's going to be the top of the buttonhole. And then I need to mark the bottom point of the buttonhole. Okay, right? And then I'll mark the distance from the bottom of this buttonhole to the top of that one. And then I will do the actual buttonhole length. And then from the top to the bottom. And buttonhole length from the bottom of that one to the top here, and then buttonhole length. Okay, so I now have the points at which I'm going to sew, and because my machine will start at the bottom and go backwards, and I prefer to, let me show you. My machine will do the buttonholes from the bottom and it goes backwards, right? I could get round it by doing my buttonholes like this instead, and then starting at the top point and then letting it go like that. But I'm not comfortable sewing with the bulk of my piece on here. I prefer, because I'm right-handed, I prefer to do it like this. I've got better control when I'm on this side. So I work with the fact that my machine will start here and then it will work backwards, which is why my process seems so bothersome. And so because I've marked this line, I can see that I need to line up this line. There's a little gap here, and I just need to make sure that I'm seeing my black ink in that gap, and that's where it will start. And I can just go boom. Make sure that everything is nice and straight, and I'll press my start button to get the buttonholes made up. And this way I've got a bit more control over it. Before I do the cuffs, I like to just do a quick check to make sure that they are going to fit the way that I want them to. Right, buttonholes have been done. I always like to give my buttonholes a little bit of a steam before I go on. Okay, awesome. So this is now done. We're going to go ahead and do those shoulder seams and see if we can construct the bodice now. Okay, so the shoulder is done now and it is looking good. This side lined up a lot better than this side did, but that's okay. So before I overlock it, I'm just going to do some grading here because there's some pleats. So I'm just going to cut these off and remove the basting and trim them down, and then I'll overlock. Oh, look at that. Look at the back. I am so excited. Maybe just a little bit excited. Awesome. Okay, seriously sewing now. So it's got a side zipper. So at this point, you need to decide whether you prefer your zipper on this side or on this side. Me being right-handed, I'm going to put it on this side. So this side is going to get sewn up, the whole side. And then on here, I'll only sew it up from this point onwards, because then it will get an invisible zipper over here. But oh yeah, all right, look at that. Ooh, can't touch this. In my excitement, I forgot to mention that the side that's going to get the zipper, you need to overlock those edges, so finish the edges straight away. And the side that doesn't have the zipper, you'll overlock it after you've actually sewn the seam down. Okay, where are we at now? Okay, side seam sewn, overlocked. Right side seam, I've only sewn this bit that goes right up to the underarm seam. This is where the zipper is going to go. So our armhole is now ready to take the sleeve. Right, we're going to leave it there for now. Made a decent amount of progress today. So the bodice is very nearly done. Next time we're going to pick up with attaching the collar and then doing the sleeves. But yeah, it's all looking good, all very, very exciting. Thank you so much for joining me again for this very slow sew along of Burda 10 2020 number 120. I hope that you're finding the video series useful and entertaining and also informative. And if you are, please do give the video a big thumbs up down below. It really helps the channel and I really appreciate it. So until I see you next time, guys, happy sewing. Bye.